Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Usually I do a thumbs up, thumbs side, thumbs down. All right. Yeah, my students love that one too. So again, going to talk about extended reality and where we're at with this and how to tell stories in this space. Um, I asked earlier, a bunch of new people came in. Anybody ever watched the movie The Matrix? Raise your hands. All right. If you haven't, raise your hand. Your homework is to watch The Matrix. Produce Fold, as I was just saying earlier, Wachowski brothers, amazing. And we just study the cinematography of it. And two, to understand what you're about to get into when it comes to XR storytelling. Not whole robots taking over the world and AI like killing everybody. That's kind of dystopian. But what we are going to talk about is how we can be present in these spaces and how XR helps us get into being able to be better storytellers too. My background, just so you know who I am, a couple titles for you. I'm an assistant professor at Syracuse University's SI Newhouse School of Public Communications, which is one of the 12 universities and colleges underneath Syracuse University. I teach in the visual communications program. I teach motion design, graphic design, motion production for design, design and world building. Anybody ever play an Unreal Engine? Unity? Couple people? Nobody? Awesome. Anybody play Fortnite? Not as popular. I'm seeing less hands now. Now every year it becomes less and less. But so I teach how to build in these spaces. I teach a character design class. I also teach a social VR class across the spectrum. A lot of cool things that we get into and we experiment with and are trying to do. And as part of that, I became an emerging media faculty fellow where I looked at how we can be better storytellers in the XR space and in motion design utilizing AI as backbone too. So there is a strong intersection that's coming, and we're going to talk about that. All right. My research, my PhD is actually on making sense of learning in XR. My whole study was looking at how people in higher education make sense of learning through virtual reality in VR experiences. So I built a coral reef where people actually can go into the coral reef and explore the coral reef and see all the different things that are happening. As part of that study, I was looking at what people perceive as real or not real, what people perceive as a threat, what people perceive as spatial movement, and we're going to talk about all those things. One of my favorite things from that study, I will definitely hyper focus on and talk about in a little bit. But you can expect with a coral reef, you can introduce so many different things in that space that make it more immersive for the person that's experiencing it than just looking at a picture. And we'll talk about that too. Some other things I dive into with my research is social VR in higher education, creating realistic movement in XR. Right now, I'm working with mocap suits to be able to utilize mocap suits to be able to move through virtual reality spaces and what that looks like. One of the fun ones I'm doing right now is rock, paper, scissors game, where you and a friend are in virtual reality and have to do rock, paper, scissors without actually communicating at all. You can't say a word. You just have to play and you have to figure out the rules and figure out how to actually get the timing down to be able to play, along with other things. Movement without motion sickness. We actually have a VR treadmill where we're actually experimenting with how people can move through space without having motion sickness or having to teleport. We'll talk about that shortly. And then, of course, the intersection of XR and AI. I have for my students built an AI teaching assistant where my students can actually go and talk to my teaching assistant and ask him questions about class, ask them about tutorials, ask them about things that they need to do for the semester. And if they have questions on any of the tutorials that I give to them, the AI teaching assistant will actually help them navigate that. So I built this whole AI experience where you can go to a website, actually hit speak to talk, and if we have time later, I'll show it to you, where you can actually work with my TA. What's really cool is I'm building a space in virtual reality for social VR where you go in. Anybody ever watched The Good Space or The Good Place? What was the name of the girl that they called and she would pop in? Yeah. Janet. I'm Janet now. You go into this virtual reality space and you say, Dr. Webb, I will show up and you can ask me a question and then I will disappear when you say go away. All right. So I am building this space in social VR to help guide students be able to interact with that space itself. So right now, that is one of those things that's on the burner. But so far, when you say Dr. Webb, I show up and I just stare at you. And we'll talk about that too, how creepy that effect can be. So these are things that I work on and kind of play around with in the background. Now, if you've seen The Matrix, you get this part. There's actually a part before this that I love even more where he meets this oracle and she hands him a cookie. Anybody understand if you're in a matrix or in the web and somebody hands you a cookie, what does that mean? What's a cookie in a website? They now are doing what? Tracking you. So in the movie, there's a part where she hands him a physical cookie and says, enjoy. And there's like this background designer developer piece that a lot of people never caught. She was actually tracking him by giving him an actual chocolate cookie. But anyhow, this is part of the scene. What is real? How do you define real? In virtual reality, we have the ability to play with a space, to be present in the space and really discover what is actually real. I'm not going to lie to you. Right now, I feel like we're in one of the worst timelines that we could ever be in. If you believe in the multiverse, this is definitely one of the weirdest ones. You got to admit, this is definitely a weird timeline. I feel like every day something's happening where I'm like, all right, can somebody pull the headset off of me and let's reset this whole game and see what happens from there? But we're going to define what is real and we're going to define how that reality works for us. We are the dream makers, all right? With that case, understanding how we can navigate these spaces is important. What we have is extended reality. It is an extension of our reality. We are taking the reality that we are supposedly in right now. We're going to extend it out and we're going to play with that. We're going to manipulate it. We're going to make it our own. All right. We're going to add information to that space that makes it engaging for other participants to participate with or other viewers to be able to get involved with. When you think of extended reality, it's that umbrella term that's extending our reality. There's 3 different levels that we play around with. We start over here with augmented reality, where we can add this nice digital asset of a cat. Everybody loves cats, right? All right. Who does not like cats? Oh, can't be friends. I like you, but we can't be friends. No, cats are great. We put that in the space. I can set a digital cat here on the table. It will sit and it will look like it's on that table. Augmented reality is not environmentally aware, meaning it is not part of the environment. It's just sitting there. Majority of the time when you're interacting with AR, who has Snapchat? Instagram. You ever play with the face filters? It's cognitively aware, not cognitively, it is contently aware of your face and it can track your face, but is it really part of the space? No, it just puts something over the top of it, right? That is an example of augmented reality. Where it kind of gets fun is we're still in our physical space, we're still in this world. Now what we can do is actually, with mixed reality, become environmentally aware. Let's put that cat on the table, have it walk across the table, and recognize that there is a table underneath it. Then it jumps down under the table and goes across underneath the table. I can't see it until I actually drop down and see the cat going through. And all of this is through a lens, whether I'm using something like what I have on right now, which are the Metas with a film over the top of it, or I use a device called the Spectacles from Snapchat. Those are 2 things, but traditionally, what do we use to be able to view these things? Holding my hand out, I reached for it. You guys have them sitting on your desk in front of you? Boom. That's usually what we use. We use a camera to be able to interact with these things. There's a lot of great apps. Snapchat is one of those great ones that you can play around with. Instagram, for the most part, used to do some really cool stuff. All right. But there's a lot of different platforms where we can interact with this mixed reality. Now, Apple came along and said, we don't like that term because it's not Apple enough for us. And they came up with the term spatial reality. And we'll talk about that in a second. And with the advent of the AVP, the Apple Vision Pro, they were able to do a lot more in this space and do some really cool stuff. Where I spend a lot of my world and a lot of my time is in virtual reality, where I'm going to take you today and we're going to pull you out of this reality for a little bit and drop you into a new reality. You're going to experience a new story. You're going to experience a new space. You're still going to be physically grounded, but mentally, hopefully, we'll be able to help you kind of move into this new space and see what that's like. This is where you are completely immersed in a virtual world or virtual environment. This is the one where I have the most fun. Now, I've gotten to meet some really cool people. One of the directors of photography for Boba Fett and The Mandalorian came and talked at our school last year, David Klein. He spends the majority of his life in virtual reality looking at the virtual productions for all those Star Wars shows. All right. He actually is designing and building those virtual spaces, and he gets to stand in virtual reality in the middle of those spaces. He gets to go to Tatooine and be able to see what the landscape looks like before they even set up a single shot. They go in and experiment with those spaces in virtual reality so that they can do virtual production off of it. And him and I were comparing notes of how we can build those spaces and actually create this really cool depth of field within that space. And it was exciting to hear what the professional world is doing with this. But as a whole, virtual reality, we're trying to separate you from the reality that you're in right now and drop you into a new space. We're going to talk about how to do that too. First one that I really want to dive into, again, just kind of reiterating that, it's the digital asset is superimposed on the user's world. This right here is the Home Depot app. This is Home Depot app. You can actually look through Home Depot's supplies and cabinets and tables. You can do this with IKEA too. You can actually scan your bedroom and plop a couch in there and see if it fits. You can scan your living room and see if you want to put a kitchen table in there just because. All right. Or put a, what are they called? Magazine table. I forget. It's been a while since I bought one. That you can put in and see if it matches the room or the decor. All right. You can superimpose these things on the space and actually see what it looks like. I did this with one of my nephews. He just bought an apartment. He's like, oh, there's this couch I saw at IKEA. It will fit perfectly here. I'm like, hold on, open up the app, scan the room, got the measurements, put the couch in there, and the couch went into both walls. Like, you might want to measure before you go and buy that couch. All right. That quickly, we were able to get a feel for what that would look like. So we actually went and got the love seat, which fit perfectly into that space. So instead of a 3-seater, got a 2-seater. All right. So these things help us provide a composite view and be able to see the space itself and do a little comparative viewing. Augmented reality is great for being able to do a lot of stuff with the face effects and doing other interactions along those lines. Mixed reality is where it gets really fun. You're still in this space, but we're mixing realities together and not only just superimposing in that space, but actually interacting in that space. Being able to bring other people into that space is one of the fun things that I like to do. These right here are the HoloLenses. Microsoft made these years ago. We used to do some really cool studies with the HoloLenses where we do, actually during COVID, we had a couple of them that we would experiment and we would meet in a virtual space. So I would be in my office, my 2 colleagues would be in their office, but we would be able to bring up digital assets between the 3 of us. I would see them as digital assets in front of me. They would see me as a digital asset. And then we would bring up digital assets and all 3 of us be able to interact with it, all within our own spaces. We weren't separated from a reality, but we were able to actually drive a conversation in our mixed reality. So we were able to mix our spaces and our digital assets and play in that space. Like I said, Apple, in true Apple form, said, no, we like the term spatial reality. We like to play with space. And what they do with Apple Vision Pro is very similar in this way when it comes to the design is they want to take the reality that you're in and add more digital assets to it and make it interact. How many of you have seen videos or pictures of people walking through public with like the Apple Vision Pro on or walking across the street with one on? You're like, nerd. Call me a nerd. Cool with that. All right. But Apple Vision Pro actually has some really cool interactive components that you can go out in public with and actually see how things are happening. One of the cool ones that we play around with all the time, and now we're doing it with the spectacles, is wayfinding. Being able to, hey, I want to go for a run, and you have the headset on. I want to go on a safe run where I know that I'm not going to be attacked or like I'm not going to go through an area where a car could possibly just take me out. They will actually come up with a map that you look down and you see the arrows guiding you on the ground as to where you go. Now, what's really cool is somebody just developed an app that goes on the spectacles. I need to run a 6:15 mile, 6 minutes and 15 seconds. I need you to pace me. Avatar will pop up and take off. You have to run with that avatar to keep up with them, to keep on that 6:15 pace. And it will show you on the ground using spatial reality where to travel and how to travel through that space. All right. All these things are things that are helping make your life more efficient and bringing those realities together. The term that you're looking for, I love this one. I saw this on the PowerPoint you shared with me. I had to steal this, is occlusion. I love this image. Again, thinking about the cat, augmented reality will put this object, digital asset, in the world on top of stuff. When it's actually mixed or spatial with the occlusion, it actually becomes part of that scene and it hides behind the object in front of you. Again, nerd, you're going to hear me say this multiple times. My office at home with Meta, you can actually scan your whole room and it will give you a boxy layout of what your room looks like. When I go into my Metas and sit in mixed reality, I have a whole solar system floating off to the side that interacts with the room. I have plants. I am horrible at keeping plants alive. Technology, not living things, sitting on the shelves around me. I have stuff that is flashing and kind of moving around in the walls. I had at one point a dolphin swimming over the top of me in my room, in my office, just because I could. All using occlusion through the matter by scanning my room, showing that these are the things that are going to block out anything that goes behind it. So I have a random ball that rolls around the room. When it goes under the desk, if I'm looking at the top of the desk and it goes under, I can't see it because it knows there's something there. So by involving these two types of things, you can play around with that type of space. And that's all on those headsets right there, which is really cool to play with. I know you guys are just getting into the concept of things, but I want you to think about this as you start pitching your stories. And of course, virtual reality. This right here, I've actually seen this in the museum, I mean, 90s. These right here, very cool. We'll talk about that in a second. But virtual reality over the years has developed to the point where we can't dream fast enough for what the technology can do. I have computers now in my lab that anything I throw at it, we just did the other day, usually when you guys use AI and you do generative AI, you throw something at it, takes like 5 to 10 minutes to make like a 10-second video, maybe. Anybody done that lately? Anybody play with Sorrow yet? Okay. Yeah. Generate a video on there, 5 to 10 minutes. We did a video generation on these computers and said, create this. And it was like a nice little like 15-second to 20-second long video. 7 seconds. We're at the point where our technology can exceed anything that we throw at it. And that's kind of crazy to think about. Virtual reality now is at the point where the technology that we're going to use gives us such a lifelike and impersonal and almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Trickery to it that we can't think of things fast enough to be able to throw at it. That's where we've come to. Now, what you will be able to do is think about how can we involve ourselves in these spaces and bring that reality that we know as of right now and bring that virtual reality a lot closer. What can we do to make that happen? Ethically, do we want to make that happen? Again, we'll talk about that too. All right. So with that being said, there's some other common abbreviations I want you to think about. There is a place called caves. Caves are actually rooms that have floor to ceiling displays all around it. You walk in with a pair of glasses on, and as your head turns, the whole display changes with you. So down in FIU, there is a fire safety room where firefighters come in and they learn how to, using a cave, be able to navigate a house to find people in a burning facility. So if a house is on fire, they have somebody outside guiding them through the space in this cave, safely figuring out how to move through room from room to room, utilizing a cave to be able to experience that. They actually pump like smoke in there. They have like stuff on the ground that they have to navigate with. It's kind of insane. The one that I know best and where I did a lot of my development when I first started is PCVR, where you take these headsets, plug it into the computer, utilize Unity or Unreal or any other 3D program, real-time rendering program, and be able to build your experiences. There's some great development in that. And then, of course, Meta. You guys have all heard the term Meta, right? Meta's been around a lot longer than our friend from Facebook has made it seem like. Meta is a term that's dealing with a metaverse. There was a great book years ago, Ready Player One. Anybody watch that movie? The book itself is a lot better because it dives into what the metaverse is. And we're actually at that point that 10, 15 years ago, he wrote that? I'm trying to remember. It was a while ago, before VR became a really big thing. There's actually, he kind of predicted the fact that Meta, Facebook, has created their own little social VR world. Vive, another VR company, has made their own social VR world, and we're all starting to talk to each other. All right. Meta is that sense of space, talking about social VR, talking about being in a metaverse. So, with all that being said, what's this look like for you guys as developers, storytellers, gamers, whatever it may be? Just looking at VR over the next couple of years, I might have to update this one. I originally got this in 2020. But the projection of content and development is exponentially growing. There is a marketplace for this. This is not a flash in the pan. One of the things I always like to talk about is for a long time, all eyes were on virtual reality. This is the future. This has got to be the greatest thing. Oh no, this company went down. VR's dead. I felt like every week up until about 2023, there was some article published, VR is dead, long live VR. And I went, that's not true. This one company made some choices. It didn't work out. So we move on to the next. The second AI came out and started taking all the limelight, everyone in VR, and you guys could probably attest to this, went, oh, thank God. We can actually focus on the things we need to do to make it better and not have the limelight constantly on us. VR is not going away, as you can see in the billions of what that projection is. And it's only gotten more so. And it starts with developers like you thinking about the stories that you can tell in these spaces and how you can leverage not just the tools, but your abilities to tell those stories utilizing the things that you know with these spaces. So with that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to experience two of these three stories. On the morning you wake, do you guys remember a couple of years ago, you were probably in like middle school. There was it middle school? It's like 4 years ago when there was a nuclear threat in Hawaii. Do you guys remember that? Did you study it in school at all? Some of you are like, no. That's what this is talking about, is an interactive story talking about what it was like to wake up the morning that nuclear threat happened in Hawaii. It was not an actual threat. It was a mess up, but they built an interactive story. Emperor is another great story that's interactive that you can actually play around with. Mission ISS, no, sorry, Emperor is not interactive. We'll talk about that. But Mission ISS, you ever want to go to a space station? This is a great experience to try this out. So you have a variety of different things that you can play around with. They all should be in your app library. What we're going to take is what, 10, 15 minutes? Sound good?
Sure.
Yeah. And you guys get to experience these. And then we're going to come back and I'm going to talk about what you actually experience. Sound like a plan? I could talk up here all day about this stuff, but you got to get in there and do it. All right. So why don't we jump into that? And I'll bring you guys back in a little bit. All right. Who did on the morning you wake? Thoughts? That was kind of cool. Was it interactive? Were you able to like move through the space or touch anything or not? All right. What did you think?
That's fun. I like the sunset. It's great.
Visuals were cool. What stuck out for you?
I felt like the way it was like telling the stories all at the same time, like where they were and what they were doing right then on like the timeline of the day as it was happening.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of thought like the way they weaved in and out of each story and setting you like truly in the scene of each person. And then I thought like when it was the girl from Princeton, how like they had the nuke on the table and she was like telling you what the nuke, like how that would play out.
Right.
And then it happening right in front of you. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that wasn't interactive, but it had a perspective to it, and it had weight to it, right? Literally, you're looking at this thing right in front of you. Anybody else? Thoughts?
I also liked how well first off the sunsets I wanted to picture, but also that like every like there's a story for like every person.
And they like you guys said, they all kind of interwoven, kind of were there with it. What about Emperor? Anybody do that one? Oh, you got two. Good. What do you think?
I don't know, it was kind of slow. It was also like tough to like figure out like how to pick things up and stuff, but it was pretty cool.
Have you ever used VR before?
Yeah, I have a headset.
Oh, nice. Okay. So that makes it even more interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it was a little bit slower paced, and I like the interactive aspect though, like when you're like turning the radio or flipping the light switch.
Yeah. That one's a more in-depth one. And I think they paced it that way so that you could kind of explore that space a little bit more. But if you're looking like, I want a story like similar to On the Morning You Wake, like that story moves a little bit, right? Whereas this one, it has more of development for it. And we'll talk about that. What about Mission ISS? Couple? What'd you guys think?
I like testing the physics of what objects had what. Like I picked up a crowbar crowbar, and like when I held it, it wasn't like it lost all the physics. But then if I let go of it, it would suddenly be able to like hit other objects, which just felt weird.
It's more of a collision thing in the
Yeah.
design, but yeah, they didn't want you going around like bashing controls and stuff like that. It might have been a design aspect to it. What about you two?
I like was outside of the space station and then I like let go and then I just floated like away into space. So I like didn't think it'd let me do that, but
Yeah.
so like, it was cool, but it made me nauseous.
Yes. Anybody else eat nauseous? I do have a funny story about that. So if you go and eat something that is sugar laden afterwards, we usually give ginger ale. I found through a study that some weird Preggy pops for morning sickness for women has a burst of sugar in it. If you pop one of those after you come out of virtual reality, that usually gets your blood sugar up very quickly and actually helps you orient yourself a little bit more when you come out of virtual reality. So there's been a bunch of studies about that. Side story, I was at a conference doing a demonstration in VR for my coral reef. I had people going through, and if they felt nauseous, I gave it to them. Luckily, nobody had it. This random woman comes up and takes a picture and walks away of the Preggy Pops. And I went, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "I'm 65. My boyfriend's 72. I just sent him a picture of that and said, we need to talk." And started walking around. I'm like, "Oh no, we're friends now. Let's talk some more." So, no, those little things like that help kind of alleviate yourself. And we're going to talk a little bit about motion and traveling through these spaces too, and how you can navigate that and make an experience that alleviates some of that. And I'll talk about some of the studies I found in social VR that talk about how we move through those spaces too. So I'm glad you got to experiment with those, and I'm glad to hear some of you actually have headsets and have done this stuff before. So there are other ones. I borrowed these off your list. I thought you guys were going to experiment with these two later on. They're great experiences. I have a former student that works for the New York Times. He does a lot of stuff with what you guys are going to do next week. He does what's called Gaussian splat storytelling for the New York Times. He's got some great articles up there. He works for the R&D team. AJ Chavares, sorry, always mess my last name. AJ Chavares. He's got some amazing interactive stories for augmented reality and mixed reality type stuff using photogrammetry and Gaussian splatting. You guys will definitely check those out next week. One of the lines in The Matrix talks about, "I know it's not real." When you're in the Matrix, I know it's not real, but sometimes ignorance is bliss. In our case, when we're dealing with virtual reality, one of the things that we are dealing with is presence, that sense of being there. Did anybody truly feel that they were floating in space when they were in that experience? Did anybody feel like they were kind of in that, well, you guys said you loved the sunsets, which is awesome, but did you feel like you were at that space? Like there's a sense of presence that we have that we're trying to continuously adapt and change. And there are some experiences that when you get in them, one of them is the deep blue. If you've never experienced the deep blue, that is one where you feel like you were there. And I have a great story about that one where you have a suspension of disbelief that I'm rooted here in this real world, but I'm actually there. And I have a colleague that I was doing a study with, and I was asking about it. He's like, "Deep blue was amazing. You're underwater, you're on the deck of a ship, you're walking around, you see a beautiful whale go by you, you see all this wildlife underwater, sea life go underwater." And he said he was walking through his kitchen. He was walking through his kitchen and he walked up to the bow of the ship and he went, and he kind of took his headset and went down. He had put his hand on the back of a chair and he thought that he had grabbed onto the bow of the ship. And like he had that suspension of disbelief of, "Oh my God, I'm there. I'm on the ship." And he started looking around and he goes, "It took me a good 5 to 10 seconds before I went, wait a minute." And he took his headset and looked and he was holding onto the back of a chair. All right. That suspension of disbelief, that embodiment of that space that I feel like I'm there. For my coral reef experience, I had people telling me, "You could have just dropped me in a vat of gel and I thought I was in the coral reef." One person was walking around the space and I'm like, "All right, you good? You can take your headset off." And he took it off. He goes, "This is definitely not where I thought I was in the room." Because they had been exploring and moving through that space and embodying that space itself. All right. Looking at the physically located space and mediating how we would move around compared to our real world settings. So usually when I do demos and VR experiences or real world experiences, I try to have an open space. We have like an open meeting room that we can use. I remove all the tables and chairs and let all 20 of my students in there. And then they have to kind of like watch each other and kind of guard each other and make sure that they can move through the space. And they all talk about the suspension of disbelief, that I actually felt like I was there. The other thing that we always talk about especially in VR and augmented reality, is the emotion that is drawn from these experiences. When you look at an image, you can look at that image to understand, right? You look at a picture of the coral reef, maybe you see like the bleaching of the reef itself, you're like, "Man, it sucks." All right. When you look at a video, somebody's narrating that video, you're watching a video of somebody swimming through the reef, you're like, wow, that's something. Like that bleaching is horrible. It's not until you actually go to that space where you have an emotional tie to that space and feel that thing that you need to have that connection with that space. One of the things that I found, and especially in doing the reef and doing some of these experiences, is when you're involved in that space, one of the affordances that we get from virtual reality, especially, is you cannot remove yourself from that space. It's a blessing and also kind of a downfall of this experience, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the blessing is, you want to see the impact of something, you want to see what it's like to be in that space and understand that space more, you got to go there. When you see something that is disturbing in a video, you very easily can detach yourself from that 2D surface by turning your head. You're now detach yourself emotionally and physically from what you see. When you go into a coral reef and you're surrounded by that space and you see something that's disturbing, you turn your head, you're still in that space. Just like when you get in uncomfortable situations in real life, you try to turn away from it. Our natural reflection is to look away and try and detach yourself. In virtual reality, it's that same thing. You're still in that space. You have that connection to a space. Chris Mill, back in 2015 in a TED Talk on VR's empathy machine. That has been a coined term for VR for a long time. I argue it's much more than this, and I have talked to many people. It's a deeper connection, deeper joy, deeper fear, and a sense of loss that really bring us into these spaces, that really hit home with the way that we tell those stories. There's a great experience from colleague Jeremy Balison out at Stanford, where you're literally in virtual reality taking a shower. And as you look to your left out the window of your shower, you see a pile of coal start developing, and it grows and it grows and it grows the longer and you're in that shower. You're just in a shower hanging out, and that coal grows up. What do you think that coal is symbolizing?
How much water you're using? I don't know, the energy you're wasting.
How many of you take hot showers? God, I hope so. All right. That is energy. Yes. It takes energy to warm up that water. And what you're watching is the longer you take a shower, how much coal is being spent to warm up that water for you to take that hot shower. And they did the study and they looked at how people interacted with that. And they came back a month, 2 months later and asked these people, what did you think? Like, has anything changed in your life? A large majority of the people that went through this 5-minute long experience said that they take quicker showers, don't use as much water when they are in their home, and they try to conserve as much energy as possible after watching how much energy was consumed just from that experience. All right. There's a deeper connection. There's also a deeper sense of what it is to be in that space itself. Now, we always joke around about being in virtual spaces. Do you think that it is air that you are breathing? There's a scene where Neo gets first introduced to the Matrix, and he's in the sensei space, and they're fighting and all that fun stuff. And he's taking these deep breaths, and Morpheus, the main character, one of the main characters, looks at him and goes, "Do you think you're actually breathing that air?" That suspension of disbelief, that suspension of that this thing could be possibly real. There are ways that we can really dive in and suspend that space and really make you feel like you're a part of it. First one is avatars, sense of self. Using the Proteus effect. You ever hear of this term? Anybody have their own avatars? As you can see, I have my own avatar that follows me everywhere. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm one of the few people that has their avatar up there because I don't know why. I haven't figured out why they still let me do that. You're not supposed to. But my avatar, I kind of embody myself off of it. And I use a couple of different ones. Proteus effects suggest that users in virtual environments adapt their behavior to the characteristics of their respective avatars. You embody who you are in that space. How many of you are on TikTok? All right. Look up Marcus later. Has anybody stumbled upon Marcus yet? Marcus is a worm from Men in Black. Somebody in social VR has made Marcus into a character in social VR and embodied Marcus the Worm from Men in Black, and is the most unhinged, insane character creation storytelling that you will ever see. My youngest daughter, who's 12 years old, will randomly come up and quote Marcus the Worm for me from these experiences. This person is embodying their respective personality of that avatar and how they represent themselves in that space. Yourself as yourself in these spaces, have a sense of embodiment and owning that space itself. I could quote study after study of people going in as others and othering themselves, and what is the negative effect of those things. All right. Using avatars as an expression of yourselves makes you feel like you're more in that space. Ready Player One has a great component of that in the book and in the movie, talking about embodiment of space, an embodiment of your avatar in that space. Next week, you guys are going to dive into this photogrammetry, Gaussian splatting, use of photography and video to generate hyper-realistic avatars in space. Like I said, one of my goals is to take the real that we're in and the virtual that we experiment in, making them closer. I can do that by making hyper-realistic images and bringing them into the space. This is not a good representation. I don't know why it always whitewashes it. This box is a leather box from over 200 years ago. It is slides that is in, we have Hendricks Chapel on campus. It is slides from all the hymns. They used to put them into this like overhead projector, which was a light. They put the slide in and it projects up on the wall, and people, instead of reading a book, it would show up on the wall. So it's like an old school slide projector, but it was all glass. This thing was insanely built. So we actually turned it into a model and then put it in virtual space. So instead of letting people touch this leather and get their oil all over it, they can now scan a space and have that box appear, and they can revolve it and look at it and see what it looks like. It's pretty cool, those type of things that we can bring into these spaces itself. As you can see here, one of my favorite things to play around with is motion capture. Andy Serkis is amazing. Over here, this is one of my students, Sam. She's a cheerleader for our football team and basketball team. I had her do a bunch of stunts, and then I was able to use motion, deep motion AI to be able to track her avatar doing those stunts. Now I have a whole library of cheerleader motion that I can use for whatever, like stunts and promo pieces. Her avatar that she designed later in class, utilizing that, she now has as an AR interaction. When you scan her business card, her avatar pops up and starts doing backflips. It's insanely cool to watch. So ways that you could play around and do realistic motion using motion capture. The one that I have way too much fun with is haptic technologies. This right here is called the Sense Gloves. We've actually developed using the Sense Gloves where you can come into a VR space and grab onto a bottle in it, and it feels like you're holding onto that bottle. It actually has like a pulley system on the back of your hand. So when you grab onto something, you get the tension and the feeling that you're holding onto that thing. There are haptic vests or haptic rumble vests where when you play the game Thrill the Fight and get punched, you can feel that thing. We were just talking about an experience called Tree, where you start as a seed and grow up through the ground. As you're growing up through the ground, that rumble vest rumbles as you're growing through the ground and seeing like earthworms crawl in front of you and stuff. And you come up in the Amazon forest, and all of a sudden you're a tree in the Amazon forest. And that rumble vest, you feel like the presence in space itself. There are gloves, there's arms. I was experimenting with the arm pieces where if I push forward on a wall, the arm piece will clamp down on your forearm and make you feel like you can't go any farther than you are. It is the weirdest mind-bending trickery thing that I've ever played with, but it makes it all the more real. So these are the things that we can utilize to help tell those stories and kind of drive home how we are going to make things realistic. Again, intersection of AI and XR, how we empower designers to create immersive experiences. You guys ever heard of the term vibe coding? You guys know what that is? Gotta look this up later. One of my PhD students who just graduated, is now Dr. Peters. For his experience, he's like, I want to make a photogrammetry game, photo game in VR where you can go around taking photos and it will store it. And then I want to ask you questions in the game itself to keep you immersed in that game. He had two different AIs writing code for him. One would write the code and then you push it over to the other AI and say, will this code work? And we're like, no, fix this. Then he would push it back to the first AI and say, does this code work? And be, no, you got to add this to it. And he literally had two AI talking to each other, fixing his code, and built the whole game off of it. He didn't know a single line of code before he started doing this. He just asked AI, if I was going to do this, how would I do it? And he had them talking to each other. Using that, he then went in and fixed the experience because he knew how to actually design in that space. And like one of the trees was like a pine tree that was like a straight stick with a piece of pine hanging off of it. So he had to go in and change some of the assets. He went in and redesigned the layouts and stuff. But he was utilizing AI to help him personalize that space using vibe coding. For me, like I said, I have an AI that I'm trying to design that drops in and allows me to be a guide for you in educational spaces. These will help us develop and design in these spaces moving forward. That intersection of XR and AI, I could come back and talk about that for another couple hours. And you're all like, please don't. Body can't live without the mind. Another great quote that Morpheus says in the movie, talking about how do we move through these spaces. There are two ways that we can move. Most of you are just experiencing 3 degrees of freedom where you moved your head around in the experience. We're able to look around and see that place. The one that I really like to play around with is the 6 degrees of freedom where I have full head movement and rotation, but I also have body movement where I can move through that space and get closer to something. And I have that presence in that space. That 6 degree of freedom really allows us to interact. You have translational position tracking, all that fun stuff. A lot of the headsets now have what's called inside out tracking. I love this graphic too. You just stole this from your PowerPoints. Inside out tracking. A lot of the older ones had outside in where you had cameras. The original Vibes had cameras where it would track where you are in the space. Now a lot of the headsets, especially those with the cameras, have inside out tracking. So as you get closer to something or if you set a boundary, it knows where you are and can track you in that space. All very cool things to play around with and experiment with as you're designing these different spaces. Again, I talked about sensor tracking, GPS tracking. You guys all use pretty much when you use a GPS device. A lot of games. Anybody ever play Pokemon Go? You can admit it. It's okay. All right. So many cool things happen with Pokemon Go and the technology that was developed off of it. You're going to talk about it more next week with the Gaussian splatting. But literally, Pokemon Go rebuilt the whole world off of photos that you took in a 3D space. They literally wrote in there, hey, we're going to use your photos to create a 3D generated world. And if you go to the app called Scaniverse, you can actually see what you guys did as Pokemon Go players whenever they needed like this, not this room, but this building, pictures of this building to generate this building. They would put characters around the building and you would go take pictures. And then the program would generate a 3D model of this building off the pictures you took using GPS tracking. Kind of crazy to think about. Oh my God, big company using our data. We'll talk about that another time too. All right, spatial mapping. I talked about this earlier, being able to map my room and making it interactive. Very cool stuff. Last thing I want to talk about is where you can create stories themselves. The matrix is all around you. The ability to tell stories is all around you. One of the fun ones you'll get into with AR is using markers. Like I said, my students make AR business cards. They actually have a business card with their logo on it, and that logo becomes their image marker, and then their avatar pops up and introduces themselves on your phones. So you scan the marker, and then you scan, look through the phone, and you can see their avatar pop up and interact with you. And there's different types of markers. You guys have used facial recognition, object markers. You can go to museums and track. You can do scene recognition, and images, like I said, with a business card. There's markerless where you can actually scan a tabletop and have an object pop up on that tabletop. You can scan the floor and have that object pop up on the floor. Those are all different ways that you can interact with those spaces. And we already talked about geotracked and location. Last but not least, I'll wrap with this and then give some quick time for some questions. Different interactions with XR. You all know about gaming. On the left there is Pokemon Go, VR movies. Now the ability to go and sit in the stadium and watch a game live with your friends in virtual reality, it's become a thing. Like I can go and sit courtside at an NBA game with my friend who's all the way on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. We could sit next to each other and watch the game and have the same perspective. Some crazy, crazy stuff with that. News documentary. You guys kind of saw that already with the Hawaiian story. Marketing. One of my favorite stories, that was Miami and South Beach. I looked down, there's a QR code. I went, either I'm going to get all my information stolen or something cool is going to happen. I scanned it. All of a sudden, I scan my phone up, a whole boutique opens up and starts spinning in front of me. Arrow pops up, points this way. Turn and look, there's a boutique down this back alley. This was their like guerrilla advertisement for like kind of a grunge way of getting people to come in their door using AR marketing. All right, some cool examples of that. This one, I did this with my daughter. I don't know Spanish. I know Russian. My daughter's taking Spanish in middle school. So she comes home. I take my Metas, take a picture, translate that. And the Meta will translate it for me. All right. Navigation. Already talked about that a bunch. Training simulation. This is a lifesaver, especially in the medical field. Medical field is way ahead on using AR and VR. Being able to do things over and over again safely without blowing anything up. As somebody, how many of you taking chemistry right now? Anybody? I took chemistry my freshman year. I had a $400 bill at the end of the semester because I blew a bunch of stuff up and I might have set something on fire that was expensive. I'm not going to lie to you. I should never be a chemist. All right. Imagine me being able to do some of those reactions in virtual reality, how much money I would have saved myself. I could have bought like 2 headsets and been a lot safer. All right. These are great things. Medical treatment diagnosis. How many of you get creeped out by this one? All right. Being able to help people with therapy and having a digital spider walk across their arm. Having people be able to walk, learn how to walk again. I did this last year. I had a major surgery on my ankle and I had to teach myself how to walk. So what did I do? Put my headset on, started walking down the alleyway in therapy, and I felt like I was walking on the beach because I had a beach scene on my head and I could walk and actually be calm and not think about holding onto the railings and learning how to walk again. Those type of therapy sessions help. Medical field, light years ahead. Forensics, this one's kind of cool, being able to recreate a scene. It is kind of crazy that you can use it in the courtroom, but being able to train people to be able to read a scene digitally and do it over and over and over again, and that repetition is amazing. And the last one I want to talk about is education itself. Here's my task for anybody that wants to get into education storytelling. You guys all recognize who that is? I want you to misfrizzle this thing. I want you to think about the magic school bus when you tell a story. How can I take somebody in a micro or macro level story to really get them involved with how they're learning? Think about your education over the years of how could you really tell a story that gets people involved, makes them feel that presence in that space and are emotionally tied to it. How different would your education been if you could have jumped on a bus and gone inside the heart and actually explored that space and seen what it's like to be a part of that space? All right. Or as you did with Mission ISS, go float in space and look at the solar system from a ways away. How different would your learning be doing those type of things? That's where I am. That's where I'm at right now with a lot of my research. And I hope you guys start developing and join the many of us trying to do these things and looking at that. And a famous line from The Matrix, you have a couple choices here. You can just ignore that this technology exists, go back to the way things were. Every once in a while, maybe play Beat Sabers and have some fun with it. Or you can really dive in and think about how these spaces can change the way that we tell stories, how you can truly engage and help people embody who they are in these spaces and really dive deep into changing the way that the stories are told. I really appreciate you guys listening to me for the last hour or so. I hope you had fun experimenting with those experiences. And I'll open up the floor for a couple of questions before class ends. Oh, we're out of time. If you want to ask questions, you can find me at Mr. Webb 7 on Instagram, LinkedIn, any social media, Mr. Webb 7.
Great. Yep. I'll see everyone next week. Address that group project stuff that I sent out to you. Because I want to prepare you to do a great, awesome job on your individual projects at the end. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Yeah.
Have a great one.